let me do the intro and we will go from there. Hey everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. Hope you're doing well. It's time for an exciting exclusive conversation on the cusp of releasing a brand new album, Forever Howlong. Tonight, we have Black Country New Road with us, two members of the band, Charlie Wayne and Georgia Ellery. I'm basically sort of engaged in an ongoing process of doing, these Zoom interviews where I sort of like get every member of the band on. So I figure, you guys, I appreciate you sort of like, slow rolling each person in the group sort of like in these interviews. You guys should remember back in 2023, they had their live record live at Busch Hall. Now they are, since the lineup change that really sort of shook up a lot of the singing and songwriting duties in the group, are on the cusp of, like I said, releasing this brand new record tonight. We're going to talk about that record and anything else that comes up in the conversation. Charlie and Georgia, thanks for coming through.
Thanks for having us. Yeah, it's kind of a bit surreal to be here. I remember Tyler and Lewis did the last one,
Right.
which must have been what, like 4 years ago, I think.
Yeah.
It's a long time ago. I was doing my last exam at university, and I couldn't even watch it. So I was writing about ancient Greeks in a library. But I heard it went well. Thanks for having us back.
Well, hopefully this one, I think you guys have actually the opportunity here to do even better than the last one. I mean, I would say improve on the last interview. It's like, right, smash is so hard that it makes them jealous for sort of like underperforming the last time around. That's what I say.
Okay.
And then Luke and May have the task of like bringing the bar, bringing the bar even higher.
Yeah. Do you think they have the ability to sort of even sort of like hurdle and jump over you guys, or no way?
Absolutely not.
Oh, really?
Okay.
I thought they do. I thought that when Luke and May get going, there's no stopping them. That's it. It's game over.
Okay, so this is the peak. All right, we're hitting the peak here. Good to know. Good to know ahead of time. All right, so just to kind of generally start wading into the album. Obviously, it's dropping tonight. We're talking about a big phase of change and evolution in the group's career at this point, with the first studio album, after things having been switched up. Before we get into specifics, like, give us kind of a general heads up, give the fans a heads up. What do you feel like we're in for here? What should we be expecting? Should we be expecting anything?
That's a good question.
That's a good question.
Yeah, it's a sprawling album. It's obviously three different singers and songwriters. I feel like there's something for everyone on here. If you're into the like fantastical lyrics, if you're into like pop stuff, if you're into dramatic stuff, it's like very sort of sunny sound. Well, not all of it, but I think it's like it's not dark, not in sound, in like tone. I think it's like it's quite like bright in tone in the sounds we've got. And I think I hope you guys enjoy it.
Yeah,
it's like I think we will probably agree it's like a transitional album.
Yeah, I think in the way that like so much of our work is kind of like figuring out what the band is like in real time, and then nothing has ever kind of really felt like it's ever properly stood still in the group. This is kind of a continuation of that, but in a sort of studio setting. I think that like we learned a lot from doing the live album, and purposely didn't consider it to be an album because it just wasn't and sort of isn't. But this is kind of, I guess, a reflection of the band in that same sort of kind of setting, with lots of different singers, lots of different ideas going on, and trying to sort of figure out the through lines between, those different ideas, and grasping at those sort of different, like from those different places, to create something that is uniform and can be expressive, not just in a live setting, but also using kind of lots of different like expansive sounds and different instruments, and not being limited to just performing it live, like seeing what it can look like rip, super large.
Georgia, if you could like dig a little bit more into what you had mentioned there about the tone, because that was something that I was sort of feeling off of not only a lot of the material from the last record, but the singles on this album. It does feel like instrumentally and musically, maybe even lyrically a little bit, that things are feeling brighter and more positive in a way. And, I mean, again, I guess you already sort of feel that assessment has some truth to it. To what would you attribute that? You know, is it like a mood shift within the band itself, or is there something writing wise within everyone that this sort of like, I don't know, emotional palette just kind of seems like the direction to go in?
Well, practically, we lost an electric guitar. I was playing mandolin quite a lot, so that's sort of like right here. We've got harpsichord, we've got banjo, nylon string, acoustic. So all these instruments just make it lighter. And Lewis has got some like whistles and flutes, different flutes, like wooden flutes. So that makes it brighter. And then obviously we have higher range voices, so that makes it like higher in tone. And but yeah, I think the emotionality in the lyrics, like as I said, it's like sprawling. It goes to lots of different places. There are some quite dark songs lyrically, which sometimes we've paired with sort of upbeat, brighter arrangements and chords and stuff to kind of what's it called when you,
or like kind of juxtaposed?
Yeah, the two things together to kind of add a bit of another layer to the songwriting. But yeah, I guess some of the songs are like optimistic, but that is, you know, you guys, you've only heard three singles, so maybe once the whole album is there, it might feel a bit more like balanced. You know?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, still though, even if that balance is there, like a song like Besties is a very interesting and bold song to start off with, not just because of like how large the instrumentation sounds, but like, I don't know. I mean, it feels unique in the current music landscape, be it either in the underground or the mainstream, and that you don't hear a lot of songs, and maybe I'm reading this wrong, that feel like such a genuine expression of connection and companionship in a way that's almost like wholesome. I don't know. Is that an incorrect read? It feels uniquely wholesome in the current music landscape. I'll say that.
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty wholesome people. So
yeah, I don't think we're sort of particularly like, you know.
And yeah, it is. That was one of the like inspirations for it. Is like genuine connection for the lyrically anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think though that like it is something that has been observed about the group, and something that we have definitely like lent into to some extent, definitely around like Bush Hall, maybe to our like detriment, or maybe kind of overly, you know, like emphasized it, this idea of kind of like unity and friendship, and kind of like, you know, to the point where I think it can kind of come across as a little bit like twee. And I think particularly as the music feels lighter, it doesn't necessarily like indicate that it's just kind of like it's this one angle kind of, you know, I don't know, like I think that particularly going from a place where the music was like pretty dark, like in quite a lot of ways, it can suddenly be relegated to this like, oh, they're just making kind of like sunshine pop, like, you know, poppy, they're all friends, they're going on how like friendship is great and cool, without, you know, which is like a pretty like, there is definitely an element of that, but it can be just kind of like, it can be seen as like, you know, unemotional or like, you know, one-dimensional if you're looking at it just from that way. But actually, I think, you know, in a lot of ways, it's like there's a huge amount of, you know, friendships in every way have so many different layers. And I think that like it's, you know, this album in particular, that song explores those different layers and like the good and the bad, like parts of any sort of like connection, particularly friendship. You know, for you, but
it's true. It's the song's got different layers if you want to read into it, but I am gonna own it and say that it is about fucking female friendships and how sick it is to have friends, and that's what it's about. So in one way, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, speaking to the layers, I was kind of like struck by that final lyric on the song, and was wondering if you wanted to speak to that a little bit, because you said something about being like a walking TikTok trend, but the color sort of runs out in the end, and I was like, that's a very curious way to finish things off.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it's sort of like it strikes as a little, I don't know, interestingly anachronistic, because the music does have like this almost theatrical vintage quality to it, and then you're sort of like hitting us with like this very bold reference to the modern, you know.
Well, when I wrote it and when we sung it for the first time, everyone was a bit like, "Ooh." That I was like, yeah, just trying something out. What do you think? And they were like, you were like, maybe something Isaac would do.
Yeah.
Fuck it, ode then.
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't think too much about it.
No, I don't think.
But it's yeah. The lyric isn't plucked from anywhere.
No.
So I don't know.
No, I mean, I think it's like I don't know, and it maybe you could tell me if this is true or not from your perspective as a creator, but I feel like in a lot of modern music and pop music, sometimes there is almost this hesitation to sort of like not dig into, but like reference the modern technological world that we exist in, whether we want to or not. And I don't know if it's due to maybe a deep dislike of it, or maybe it just feels kind of weird, or maybe there's a fear or sort of concern that it'll be sort of like dated at some point. I don't know, but it just sort of seems like there's usually a wariness about that. And you sort of headed into that line pretty boldly, and I loved it.
Oh, good. I mean, it's good to be bold.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I don't really have a problem with. I think I've done it in lyrics before. It doesn't shake me like it shakes other people, but I get that it does. Yeah.
I quite like it when like songs reference like, you know, stuff from, you know, the period, like on like
Facebook.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah, Facebook story on Blonde. It's like that's like sick. And it's like obviously like super outdated now, but it's like
a time and a place.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's cool. I like it.
Yeah, you know, there's all those like classic rap songs that have references to pagers or stuff like that. You know, I love hearing that stuff because it does sort of take you back to a time and give the song like a sense of place. So with that being said, there are these consistent themes of connection in layered sorts of ways. I wanted to ask if obviously, with that being sort of like a focus artistically, is that also sort of like a focus on a personal level too? Because you know, also what sort of makes the group stick out in the modern music landscape is that, you know, you're a relatively large band with a lot of different sort of, you know, gears and members and you know, different writing duties and stuff like that. How do you guys, with things being so I don't know, divvied up in terms of like responsibilities, keep those working relationships going and things well oiled so that you're able to work and write and tour effectively and do it in such a, you know, a collective manner?
I mean, I think that like the size is actually one of the like definitely helps all of those like, you know, those things work. I think the only difficulty with the size in a lot of ways is like the fact that it's quite an expensive band to run. And like we are in an extremely fortunate position where like this is our like full-time job, so we don't necessarily have to worry about it. But yeah, I mean, like in a lot of ways, like having 6 people is great. You have like so many different ideas kind of constantly in the room, and like we've known each other for a long time. We've been making music for a long time together, so those relationships have kind of been, you know, like they've formed gradually and like they're not like, it doesn't feel temporary. It kind of feels like they're, you know, always like changing a bit, but they're like good solid friendships. And I don't know, it's just like it's whenever we're making music together, everyone kind of respects one another's sort of, you know, opinions and their instruments, and like everyone knows their place in the whole sort of like process. And we talk a lot about stuff, and like when we go on tour, it's so nice to have like space rather than just kind of being in like a smaller band or like even like a solo artist, just like the space and the people to talk to. Yeah, it's just like, it's nice. It's a good thing. It doesn't, you know, it definitely causes much more like cohesion than it does conflict.
Would you guys say generally is sort of like, I mean, you were talking about kind of the writing process a little bit. In your experience, is it sort of helpful? Does it make things happen faster to sort of have other people contributing ideas and sort of either signing off on things or, putting in the work to make something come together? Or does a bunch of different perspectives kind of slow things down because you have to democratically decide what direction to go into?
Yeah, that can be a bit slow, the voting and like trying multiple different versions of just the sort of structural idea out. That can be time consuming, but yeah, like you said, you've got like 6 people noodling in a room over a song when you're playing it through for the first time, and a lot of ideas come together very quickly. And we can get good states of flow, especially when we stop talking, because we talk a lot, don't we? And then it's like, hang on, where were we? Sort of thing. But things can also go really quickly because we record in a studio. We recorded in 3 weeks, and that's like a song a day, and then overdubs at the end. So then things go really quickly. You're getting things tracked and down. It didn't take us 3 years to make this album. It took us a year and a half. So it's like some things are longer, but then some things are shorter.
With the process of writing and recording this album, was it, always kind of decided that the material that you're working with here was going to be like wholly new from what we heard on Bush Hall? Because obviously, like with that record coming out in the fashion that it did, and fans having had the time to like really come to love a lot of those songs, I'm sure at some point they expected like, oh, are we gonna hear like studio versions of like all these tracks and stuff like that? At this point, does that material just read to you guys as like, that's a moment, that's an era, and we're just like kind of moving forward from that?
Yeah, like totally. I think that is kind of like the reason why it's like even out in the first place. Like, I think if we kind of really wanted those songs to kind of be on a studio album, we wouldn't have put out Bush Hall. We would have just kind of waited. Doing it in the way that it was, the live video, and then being able to listen back to that is exactly how those songs were kind of written. They weren't ever kind of conceived as like, an album. It's like a performance. And I think it kind of reads as that. And the songs to some extent kind of read in that way. And I think it's like, it is meant to be listened to as like a set. And those songs like definitely like exist like in standalone like format really nicely, but like they are written together and they kind of should be like reflected upon like kind of as just like that. Really. They're not, and I think to kind of take one like cherry pick like stuff and then put it onto a new album kind of wouldn't feel right, to be honest. Again, it's just sort of weird, I think. Like, because also we're trying to, kind of trying to create this like musical world a little bit. And I think like if you take something that already exists and feels like it's sort of done in a way, and then also something that's like kind of already out and then putting it in a new context, I think was not something that ever even really came to mind. Like, I don't think any of us even really properly considered putting any of those songs on the new album. Really, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely imagine and hear what in your head, like what that might sound like. But yeah, I agree with Charlie. Like, that was that world and that was that time, and we're good at bookmarking periods of time, and also just like we're interested in what's new and fresh for us. We don't like having to repeat. We're playing these songs so much live on tour, and they'd got to the as good as some people may feel like they are, like we've got to the point where we're like, we are done playing this. We're done. We're not going to fucking bring it to the studio and like hash it out even more. Like
That's actually such a good point. I couldn't imagine going to the studio and being like, fucking hell, I have to go and play like
not fun. Like, no. This is the exciting thing for us, and I think for loads of people play music. I think definitely it's just you're on to the next thing. You're following a creative path, this direction, it leads you here. You're not into the same music you were into a year ago, so totally. Why write this? Write the same music.
And it's not as though those songs are like done. I think we'll still play them, like
yes, we're going to play them still.
But just like creatively, I think felt much more satisfying to think about doing new stuff and create something new rather than to kind of bring something from the past into like a new context, maybe.
Do you guys feel like the studio material with this new record is, its own sort of cohesive vision like the Bush Hall record was? And, if so, what about it, I guess, either thematically or instrumentally, is sort of like creating that essence as opposed to sort of like the live performance, concept that made the last album sort of its own thing?
I think like the idea behind this album was kind of always to like create something which would only really properly be realized like in a studio context, like fully. I think it's always, like we always prioritize like live performance in like a really massive way. So, it's always been a huge focus of the band, but we've never kind of gone into a project thinking like we can make this as good as it can possibly be, like in a studio. None of us kind of really have that much experience in a studio. And I think that like going in to do an album was kind of always a bit of like let's see how well we can make this sound like in a room together, like everyone playing, getting really good takes. Like with Ants from up there, we just did it like tracked it all basically in one room with very minimal overdubs. And the guy that engineered and produced it was our live sound engineer, Sergio. Like he would come up with us and he came into the studio. He'd never done a record before. And that was kind of the ethos of it. And this is just like, we knew from the outset this was going to be a totally different project, like altogether, just in terms of like approach. We knew that like Tyler, Georgia, and May weren't going to want to like use any of the vocals that they sung on, like if we did tracked it all in a room together. And that was kind of the jumping off point. In the same way that like the vocals are very much like the focal point for the record in a lot of ways. Like those had to be kind of, treated in like a quite a meticulous like environment, and so did like everything else. So we kind of, I don't know, we wanted it to be like nice and detailed. We didn't want to limit ourselves with all the instruments we used. Like we wanted to experiment with different spaces. We wanted to use like, record stuff, like, and have it in mono and then broaden out into like, to full stereo. We wanted you to kind of like hear lots of different environments, play lots of different instruments, and like not feel limited, just to be expansive, I think. It's quite a long-winded answer, but yeah, it was like, I don't know.
Yeah, like we were worried going like cohesion. What's the through line? Oh, okay, we've got 3 female voices on it. That's our through line.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I think when you're there in the studio and you're using all the same instruments and they're being treated by a producer, and I don't know, that's the fact that it's us 6 are playing is probably the through.
Yeah, but I think also like thematic lines and stuff like that are kind of, they are.
We reference each other's songs. There's like,
yeah, definitely.
There's a couple of songs that were like made in tandem of each other towards the end.
I think you can be like super like overt with your approach to kind of cohesion, like we did with the last album. We have like a motif which repeats like at the beginning, at the end of the album, and it crops up in a lot of the different songs.
So that was very almost conceptual.
Yeah, and so like that, yeah, it's kind of conceptual in that,
and done by lyrics. The lyrics all thematically linked, and obviously we were, we did have that conversation, like, oh, how can we link but it felt like a little bit oppressive on us as songwriters because we're very different and we want to talk about different things in our songs. So,
But then the kind of those reflections, like in sort of like, even though there wasn't necessarily like a conversation like that established through lines throughout the record, it just kind of became apparent throughout the writing process that like songs started kind of to reflect one another. And there's like a similar, like the 3 voices like have such a distinct palette that kind of is used in lots of different ways. And like, there are also like these songs that are kind of like these big, kind of quite epic songs that each you, Georgia and Tyler, like, sorry, you, May and Tyler, like all have. Your Georgia, of course. And then like, songs that like that each of them have, which kind of reflect like really small, tiny bits of their, like a day, and they're kind of like equally like exploring different emotional spaces, but from totally different ways. And I think that's like kind of interesting, and it's cool to have it on the same record. Like, I don't know.
To dig into that specifically, because there are a lot of questions about this popping up in chat. How are the vocal duties on this record divvied up as opposed to Bush Hall? Is it just those 3 voices on the album as far as leads, or is there something else?
It's just this.
Yeah, well, I guess they're probably speaking about like whether Luke has like
Oh yeah, backing vocals. Yeah, no boys.
No boys.
No,
'Cause
no boys allowed.
No boys allowed on this one. This was a like no boys only. Yeah, no boys
You know,
allowed project.
we tried the Men on the Live album, didn't work out. We were like, nope, this
No,
is
no, no. It wasn't
No,
that.
no, no, no.
It wasn't that.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm joking.
Okay, good.
You shut up. You shut your fucking mouth. Like I think that we'd like Lewis was obviously singing on Bush Hall, and then I think and then he just like decided that he like
He wasn't enjoying the shows.
yeah, exactly. He wasn't enjoying the shows as much.
He wanted to focus on saxophone.
Yeah.
Flutes. So that was not, we weren't make it an all-female vocally led album. That happened as a byproduct.
Yeah, totally.
And it's boys next time. So
yeah, no boys, all boys next time. Yeah.
I wanted to ask, especially since like Happy Birthday was kind of hitting me in a different way than some of the other singles so far. Like, is all the writing done on these tracks, like just from, from an authentic, personal, like first person perspective? That song, the vocal delivery and the storytelling on it specifically comes across almost as if like, we're hearing the story told from like a narrator or another person. Like, it feels to me the writing is almost like the person who was writing it is maybe more writing about it from the experience of like, oh, I'm dealing with this person who's sort of like telling me about like, how I should be sort of thankful about my life or the place that I come from and something like that. I don't know if that's an incorrect read, but it felt almost as if like, that song was performed almost like in character in a way. Is that the case?
I mean, Tyler's lyrics, so I actually couldn't comment. I don't really know.
Yeah, I think it's like one of those things where like they are Tyler's lyrics, and it's like I don't know whether it's necessarily like our place to kind of to say.
Our guess is as good as yours.
Yeah,
okay.
I think.
Well, I mean, it's that does sort of like, I guess clear up something interesting. I mean, as you guys are making these songs or supporting each other in the process of making these tracks come together, like how much into each other's process are you kind of like letting each other in? Is it something that like you keep personally because that's a choice, or is it more of an unspoken, like, I'm not going to dig too much into it as long as I like the song. I'm not going to like ask them what their motive behind each line is or whatever. Your creative process is your creative process.
Yeah, I think that's kind of like the MO, really. I think that if you want to know, you can ask. But like, I only found out what the lyrics to like for the Cold Country were like last week when I looked at them on Spotify. Like,
wait, are you serious?
Yeah, genuinely. Like,
it's kind of been the case. Like, we did not know what Isaac was singing until the album came out.
Yeah. Like, I think, but also like even if we did, it wouldn't really be like, unless it was like, unless it was like something like, extremely like,
yeah, like potentially veto potential on the TikTok line.
Yeah, exactly.
If the band had said, gross, get rid.
Mm-hmm.
No, but like generally it's just, it's their domain. It's like, it's in the same way that I'd be kind of like, like fucked off if someone told me to completely change my drum part. Like, or no, but like, not, but like it's your domain. And it's like, I wouldn't like, and I think that, and actually, the lyrics are specifically kind of more important in that way. Like, it's like, it's someone's very, and they are personal. Like, it's someone's like, unless you're invited into that world, you are like, I don't think you really have like a sort of a say, really.
With that sort of like level of, I don't know, privacy and personal control over the songs, and there being different voices and sort of a democratic process of like deciding, the writing and the recording and so on and so forth. Like, does the band at this point, do you guys feel like, does it have a voice stylistically and sonically? And if it doesn't, does that even really matter? Is that something that you guys even really concern yourself with?
Well, I think we are changing stylistically. We have changed. we have some things that, the way in which the way in which we play our instruments and the way they connect, like talk to each other, interact, has kind of always been there, like off my head, like me playing the violin and Lewis playing the saxophone, we've always kind of played lines together. And that kind of has continued into this album when I'm playing violin, and when I'm not playing violin, he's doing lines with me.
Yeah, when
I sing. Yeah. So those sorts of things that are very kind of specific, but if you would listen to the band, I mean, we certainly noticed it playing it.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Because we kind of look to each other and it's like, oh, you're going to play a third above me? Yeah.
Yeah.
And likewise, you and May playing your stuff together.
I think we've actually had a lot of fun with the little mandolin, and I follow you quite a lot.
Yeah.
Mandolin bits, and like, I think,
those sorts of things, those are kind of like tropes of the band, I think. And the fact that we're a live band and we've got piano and we've got guitar and then we've got like sax and violin, that's kind of sort of like it's so those are the things I would probably say make Black Country New Road is the instruments. And
definitely.
But yeah, I mean, we're going to be changing styles of songs and music and genres, I'm sure.
I'd be like super surprised if the next album sounded like this album. But I think that like in the same way that like, the album before didn't really sound like the first album, the changes are kind of constant. But the band kind of has, I think that like, the thing which remains the same is the way, that was right, the band communicates with each other and the way we play together, and the kind of like the sort of weird soup of ideas that we kind of all have and these different influences that kind of, I guess, like direct our playing styles. That's the thing which sort of is maintained.
Speaking of, surprises with obviously the entire album not being out yet for a great deal of people, so we don't know fully what like the entire reception is going to be yet. But if you had to guess, like, for people who are watching, what track or tracks, moments, if you could whittle it down to one or a few, do you feel like listening to it for the first time might be the most surprising for fans who are hearing the album for the first time?
Oh, well, I mean, probably best.
But
you guys have already heard that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess throughout the rest of the album that we haven't caught quite yet, and Besties was a surprise. Besties was a surprise, and a good one.
Cool.
Nice.
I think that like people were gonna, I think people will probably be sort of surprised, like generally, especially like I think, people who know the band through like Ants From Up There and are kind of like know the band through a sort of associated with a very specific style of like music. It is definitely like a change from that. Like it's a departure. I think if you kind of like, it inhabits like a very particular like emotional space, which is like definitely explored in some ways in this album, but not, really in the same level, not really from the same kind of way. So I think that like, it's, I don't know. I think that there's like I don't know. I'm not really sure what I was trying to like say. I think that maybe listen to like Two Horses, I think is like a really good way of like that's kind of like one of those tracks which is like maybe indicative of like stuff that we have like definitely done in the past. It's actually like I was thinking about this day. It's kind of similar to Sunglasses in some ways, in that it's got this like quite defined A section.
Don't get them hyped up.
No. But like it's like really defined A section and then B section where there's like a real like change in style, but actually like in the same way that like Sunglasses kind of does, but particularly from my drumming, it's very similar.
Yeah.
But it's so it's got that same, but like I don't know, not like. It's but stylistically it's totally different. It's like I guess it's like similar, that similar sort of way that the band remains the same but playing on completely different style of music.
From George's original answer there with Besties, I wanted to ask you guys as far as like the general feelings within the band about this point of evolution and how fans are sort of like interpreting it now. Obviously we've had like, I don't know, a bit of a buffer there in time to sort of like process this change through the live album, and that record had the positive reception that it did. as of right now, are there any sort of like still jitters or sort of concerns about like how are people sort of seeing and reading the band, after sort of like a record that is as beloved and successful as Ants? I mean, you still have to wonder, but simultaneously with you saying like, oh yeah, we went with Besties, and maybe that's like the most surprising song on the album, it sort of sounds like on some level you're leaning into that. Like it's different. People aren't going to know how to fully take it maybe, but like, fuck it. Let's just go fully into it. It's going to be what it's going to be. Let's not just sort of ease it at this point.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, of course.
We're always in like front of we're like running ahead of the fact, like we've got the music, we've made the music.
Yeah.
We've settled with it before these guys are, So, I forget that sometimes a little bit. I'm like, yeah, let's just go with but maybe that's a nice thing to do.
I think it's a good thing. It's a great thing to do. I think like it lets you feel in control of it. It's like, it's a cool thing. Also, like, if I think it would be boring if we tried to make music that was just the same. It would be bad. It'd be worse. Yeah, we literally couldn't.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't think about you guys when we're writing, like at all. Like at all. If you
honestly, that's fine.
Noticed, you get what you give.
And I don't think you would like it if we did that. Just speaking now from the heart to you guys.
What about as far as like decisions when it comes to kind of like presenting the band itself and this record? To kind of kick that off, I was kind of wondering if you'd get a little bit into the cover art on the album. It's like very peculiar. What is that, like colored pencil drawing or painting or something like that? It's very peculiar series of images. I want to know how they were created and decided upon as far as like fronting this new era of the band's music.
I mean, this is like one of those things where I think that like sometimes I wonder whether like our tastes are kind of like really different from like quite a lot of people, because like, I mean, even though like I think the artwork is amazing and I think it's like I think we all do. It's like actually one of those things where like we take fucking ages to decide on like the color of a t-shirt and like let alone like something as important as like an album cover. But it just like when Luke basically Luke followed the artist Jordan Key on Instagram. He'd followed him for ages,
years, like
literally years. And then he was going through his art. As we kind of it became apparent that we did need
an album cover.
Yeah. So he was like looking through, and we were kind of getting a Google Doc together, and he sent through like some of his artwork, and it was kind of like almost unanimous. It literally took like I think about like maybe a day, less than a day, for us to all completely agree to using Jordan's art, and actually also using the artwork that eventually became like the album cover and then all the singles covers. It just like happened so quickly. There's something really like, I think I don't know, it's just like great. I find it so
we all had an immediate like good reaction to it, I think, and it's very I don't know, I'd say it's quite American.
It is kind of American.
It reminds me of he like the Jordan is a skater. Was a skater? Is a skater.
I think he skates, yeah.
So it's kind of got a bit of that swag to it. And there were more pictures than just one that we liked. So we kind of had a series, and they were kind of they had this theme, this sort of like celestial theme to them, which kind of tied it all together, which helped the album title as well, for me personally.
Yeah, definitely. It was just like,
go on.
No, I was just gonna say, like, when sometimes I think it was like it was kind of the same with the Ants cover. It was like, oh yeah, that's it. Like, and it's totally like I can't really describe to you why it's really good. And like it was just the exact same with this. It was just like, okay, that completely makes sense.
Because like the sunset, like I don't know if you know the names of the pencil drawing
for Cold Country.
For the Cold Country, that pencil drawing, I thought it was it's called Sunset Goose.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was someone like and like this crazy look in the eyes, like, okay, it's cheeky.
It is cheeky. It's lovely.
But actually, the goose is the thing flying underneath the face. It just kind of has a like fuck it energy that was kind of the MO of the album, to be honest. So. In our way.
He's a cool guy. The guy in the front is just like, he's like, it's a cool, he just doesn't, he just sort of like chilling out.
He's got his sunglasses
He's
on.
got his sunglasses on. He's just kind of going like holding, anyway.
Yeah, and I love how with this record and also with Ants, like those images, they're a part of like a series, it's like you're kind of getting different kind of bits,
Yeah.
Also with the group presentation, I wanted to, I don't know what the, I guess I was kind of curious as to whether or not you guys have sort of like, I don't know, ever had a struggle or sort of like a second guess in terms of like, showing the band, marketing the band, trying to get yourselves out there and sort of like understood as a collective musically, because it seems like increasingly, especially in like the music streaming age, that like a majority of the success stories and most marketable artists that you see out there, it's always like it's a solo act, it's another solo act, it's another solo act. And not only is this a solo act, but it's like a solo writer, producer doing everything on a laptop in their apartment. Maybe they're working with two producers and several behind the scenes people who they're kind of slipping in there covertly to sort of like make it seem like what they're doing is as just like individual as possible. And again, it's just interesting to sort of like see you guys not only sort of going against the grain with that, but in a way, it seems like you're consciously sort of like celebrating your collectivism and trying to get people to sort of like understand this is like not just from the voice and the perspective of a single person. And, I just wanted to know if that was like an important sort of like a message to get across in the way that you guys like put the band out there.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that whole world, that sort of music industry world that you're describing is so alien to me. I wouldn't even know where to like necessarily start. Like all I really know is like being in bands and like being in bands with people that I've known since I was like really young. And the industry is kind of this just sort of like, it still exists as kind of sort of like monolith. I don't really know, like, like what it is. And I think like, I don't know. I think, yeah, we were super lucky to be in this band like together, and I think we're super lucky to have been doing it for a long time. So it kind of has always just been quite organic, and all the decisions have kind of always just been made as like a group. And I think we kind of navigated the sort of ups and downs of how that is like together, whilst feeling quite grounded. I think that even though the band has like definitely like benefited from like a pretty fast like upward trajectory, like thanks to lots of different kind of, like internal and external like cogs in sort of, I guess like the music world. It's always felt fairly like insulated to just us kind of like playing music in like rehearsal rooms and then, like on tour when we've kind of, eventually gone on tour. It's like, I don't know. I mean, I know you, like the industry obviously does like benefit, or like it does encourage like solo artists and like they're kind of easily to kind of control. But like there are, I'm kind of always still like super surprised at how many epic bands there are, like particularly like young like bands from like England and like Ireland that are kind of constantly just like seem to come out of nowhere and are just like brilliant and feel like frenetic and not quite fully formed and just like kind of. It's always happening. I don't know. It's always, and it will.
It does kind of feel like right now you guys and, at one point as well, like Black Midi kind of set a bit of a trend with that. And now it sort of seems like there's more and more bands coming out of sort of like your neck of the woods who, I don't know, have a bit of a similar vibe. I mean, I don't know how much of this you care to keep track of, but I've seen some people online call it like windmill scene. Yeah.
Windmill scene is definitely, it's much better than calling it like post-Brexit rock or whatever, or like crank wave or fucking was like that. Those are both way worse than windmill scene.
Right. No, is that what it was being called at one point? Is this like post-Brexit indie, post-Brexit rock? Is that what people were saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Awful.
Well, yeah, I'll take windmill scene over that any day. I suppose that's good. Whatever you could sort of like label this under, and maybe it doesn't even need a label to begin with, but it does sort of seem to be like a bit of a trend to sort of see these groups that you were just kind of like, referencing, like, is there anything from your perspective with your proximity to all of that, you sort of like can attribute to that trend? Like what is causing, these sort of groups to kind of crop up out of nowhere? What is causing, I guess, sort of like the intense interest in it and, sort of the sonic and instrumental similarities that some of them and overlaps that some of them have?
Well, I don't know, like being in a band is fun.
Yes.
It's cool.
It's cool and fun.
Nice to play music with people, not alone. I think it can be a grueling task, probably doing stuff alone, and yeah. So maybe that's why. But I guess band culture's kind of always been strong. I don't know whether it's ever died.
Yeah.
It feels like the majors are signing loads of bands these days,
Like
especially from here.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think also like, sorry, Anthony, carry on. Well, I think like even though like some of the bands like, you know, I guess like part of the implication is that like we have influenced the sound of some of those bands, and I think that maybe like is true. But in general, I think some of the, you know, like some of the best new bands just sound like how kind of epic bands have always sort of sounded like, which is like kind of like, you know, my favorite bands at the moment like sound like Modest Mouse and like Silver Jews and like Pavement, like you know, they are kind of just like, it's coming from the exact same place that we have, just like through small venues in the UK.
Shout the band out though. Give the band a shout out.
West Side Cowboy, epic band. Like you got to, you know.
Thank you. Like, were you just gatekeeping there? Did I catch you gatekeeping?
No, not at all.
Are you sure? No. You might have been kind of gatekeeping there.
Oh no.
Okay. All right.
Oh no, not at all. I'd never gatekeep.
So you would never gatekeep, and you guys would never want any Black Country New Road fans to gatekeep Black Country New Road, is what you're saying. You disavow all gatekeeping.
Black Country Road's for the people.
Yeah, get out of it. If you do it,
they're for the people.
Get out.
Okay, good. Okay, good. Good to know. Good to know. Did you want to tell us a little bit about some of the tour dates that you have coming up? You know, especially stateside over here, because I know those are going to be coming up in the spring.
Yeah, thank you so much for mentioning. Of course, yeah, we're going on tour. We're going to go on tour. We're going to the States in May. We're doing a tour of, I guess, like it starts in Chicago properly. We're doing a couple of tour shows at the Bowery Ballroom, but I think tickets for that might have gone. But we're playing in Chicago, I guess, in the middle of the month, maybe the first week of the month, and then we go down through the Midwest, and then all the way up from sort of, you know, Utah up, and then down the West Coast from sort of Seattle, Portland, San Diego, Los Angeles, San Francisco, all those places. You know your geography. Yeah. So if you're around.
Oh no, I definitely would like to come to one.
Yeah. So which one will we see you at?
You know, I know you guys are probably going to do New York date. I mean, I would probably like to come to that, something like that. Boston too? Are you guys also doing Boston? Maybe a Boston show?
Well, we might do. I think what will probably happen is we'll probably do like a East Coast tour, like sometime like later next year.
Okay.
Like
but then the New York one, maybe you see there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Who knows?
You know, I also wanted to ask you, Georgia, specifically, with you know, obviously your creative endeavors being split up, not just between this, but also Jockstrap too. If there's anything in terms of like, you know, that front that fans can look forward to as far as like new material or stuff that you're, you know, doing within the confines of that duo, or are you mostly just kind of focused on this new record tour, Black Country New Road right now? How do you, you know, sort of balance those two worlds, and where are they at right now for you?
Yeah. So at the moment, Black Country New Road, go. Having a bit of time off Jockstrap. But actually, we do have 2 gigs this year in the US. We're playing in Seattle and we're playing in New York. Maybe I can say that. I've said it. So fans can look forward to that and come see us. But yeah, there will be in the future. Just right now, it's this.
And as you continue sort of on both of those fronts, do you find like your creative voice or process sort of like coming from entirely different places, whether you're writing for this band or whether you're writing for Jockstrap, you know, comparatively?
I feel like these songs that I've contributed to Black Country New Road, I've written with the instruments we play in mind. That's been my parameter. And to an extent, like what the usual topic of songs are about within what we'd been writing recently. not that they're the same, but having also parameters on that a little bit. And it's been, it was definitely something new. I think with Jockstrap, I just write whatever, because it's going to turn in. I can't. It's never how I originally write a demo. It always changes, so I kind of have to. Yeah, it's always going to go somewhere else with that. But with this, I have instruments to write to.
Okay, well, guys, thank you for coming through. We're all excited to listen to the new record once everyone here can hear it. I appreciate you taking the time and giving me what's going to be my best Black Country New Road interview, because my next one with your remaining two members, as you've said, is going to be worse than this one. So,
Sure.
although I still think you should encourage them to outdo you guys.
Oh,
when
yeah.
happens.
We game on.
Yeah. I mean, as long as it doesn't create any weird tensions in the band, I don't want to be the source of any sort of arguments or anything.
Too late, man. It's too late.
Yeah.
It's done.
Too late? It's already happened?
Over. It's over, man. That's it. Sorry.
Okay. Well, I apologize for that.
No, it's our problem.
We'll let them know you've said sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I hope you guys have a good rest of your night. Thank you again for taking the time, and have a good one.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Cheers.